So how long between you're having a personal conversation with yourself that I'd like to be a legal drug dealer and like the first batch of stuff is ready for a bunch of ravers to try? Was it years, months, days?
Days.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I
made
amazing.
I made the decision. I picked up the phone. I went to the library. And it was a crazy time. I actually didn't have enough money to make the phone calls I needed to make, because back then we had these things called pay phones and you had to drop quarters in. So I had a guy I knew who was a hacker type who loaned me one of these crazy boxes, and you would put the box up to the phone and it would make some sounds, and then you'd be able to make a phone call. It was a total hack thing. I'm sure it was very illegal at the time.
Right.
I'm not sure like what was I'm not sure what was involved in all that, but that's how we would make the phone calls in those days. And I just got on the phone and I wouldn't take no. And sure, people would hang up on me, and sure, people would be like, you're out of your fucking mind. And there was many times where I would just show up at people's offices, people's place of business, and I would just sit there until they saw me and told me to get the fuck out and never come in again. And there was a lot of that, but that didn't affect me.
Yeah, you got nothing to lose at that point, right?
Got nothing to lose, and it's actually funny, I oftentimes tell the story, and, one of the guys, I've got a young guy who I mentored. He just raised $5 million for a startup and he's doing phenomenally well. One of the young people that I mentor now, because I mentor a lot of people, I always tell him the story and he's blown away by it. When I made my first, something like $100,000, something like that, I had a backpack and I went out and I bought a pair of shoes. I never wore it, but I got a new pair of shoes because I was like, you know what? If everything fucking goes to shit, if I lose everything, because none of this feels real right now. I was sleeping in an abandoned building. Now I've got an apartment and, I got $100,000 in cash. Like, I'll at least have a new pair of shoes that I can wear anywhere I want. So I've got that. And until recently, I still had that backpack, which held all of my belongings and a pair of new shoes. And I had that exact same backpack until, a few years ago, but it was a reminder to me, when I was making millions of dollars, when, one morning, so I wake up and so let me tell the story this way. So it went from that one drug dealer to 10 to 1,000 to 10,000 to all over the world.
And what's amazing is the drug you're selling is 100% legal. It's made from all legal herbs. Like you can, maybe you can get busted for not paying your taxes or not having the right licensing or something, but it's not like you're going to get busted with 10,000 of these pills and go to federal prison for the rest of your life.
You're right.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was all natural, all legal. And that was one of the reasons why, at the end of the day, the government was so frustrated with me. I mean, the president took actions against me at the time. He, put a head of the FDA at the time. It was a guy named David Kessler who went on national TV. He refused to be on TV with me in the same room. So we had to do a satellite broadcast on Sam Donaldson's show Nightline. Great reporter Sam Donaldson, who ironically also covered Iran-Contra. But Sam Donaldson came to my office and I did the interview with Sam, and David Kessler did the interview by satellite in some other office. And he was really, the directive was to take me down, but the government didn't understand because they were like, well, if it's fucking drugs, we'll get the DEA on him. And they called the DEA and the DEA investigated, and they're like, it's not drugs. They're like, well, then we'll get the FDA on him. And the FDA was like, yeah, it's a supplement, sort of. It's not a vitamin. It's not a vitamin. They didn't know what to do. I didn't fit into any mold. We had created an entire new niche. Not only that, we were selling in the most unconventional of places. Sure, we got into GNC and 7-Eleven, and I was in 30,000 doors by the time I was 18 years old. 30,000 stores were selling our stuff, not including the franchises that each had 5,000, 10,000 stores, those kinds of things. But we were also selling through unconventional places. We were selling through adult stores. Larry Flynt called me to his office many times. He was selling us at his Hustler stores. We were sold in all the places that sold Playboy and Hustler and Penthouse, all those places. Not only that, we were sold in record stores. When the CD business started to go down because of Napster and iPods coming out and all that stuff, these stores were dying. Tower Records was dying, and we kept them afloat. People were coming into the store to buy Herbal Ecstasy. We were keeping the new age bookstores afloat. They were all selling Herbal Ecstasy. Everybody was fucking selling Herbal Ecstasy. All the stores on Melrose, Haight-Ashbury. I had my own stores. that we franchised. So you would see these neon ecstasy signs all over the place. We had a flagship store on Melrose that was a store that just sold legal psychedelics and legal drugs and books on psychedelics, and we had lectures, and it was an insane time. And then
and how long is this, by the way, from like when you first get your first drug dealer at that rave to be like, all right, you're out of illegal drugs, try this legal stuff. How long does it take to grow from that first 100,000 to like, holy shit, man, we're franchised in Larry Flynt's place, you know, like how long did it take you to ramp that up? And what does that even look like to fulfill that much herbal product? Because I imagine now you start having supply chain issues and all these big boy business issues, which obviously you eventually became a master of that, and that's why you're able to do that now on Amazon. But I mean, what does that journey look like as a 17-year-old kid to be like, oh, now I got to have like a big boy supply chain and pay taxes and all this crazy shit? Like, what does that even look like? I can't even fathom trying to deal with that as a teenager.
Yeah, so that was a couple years between, you know, somewhere between 1992 and 1994, and around 94, 95 would probably be the height of it. And then, so this is an interesting story, Scott. So one morning, you know, sometime there in the 90s, I woke up and I stumbled into my office, right? I got into my Ferrari. I drove down there. I had 200 people working for me. I owned Venice Beach. Like, everybody in Venice Beach was working for me. I mean, I literally, if I saw your face on the street, you were employed. I couldn't hire enough people. There was no workforce. It was pre-internet. We didn't have any of the recruiting sites, and I just needed warm bodies in seats taking orders. We were selling it as quickly as we could make it. Everybody wanted me on their talk show. I did Montel Williams. I did Sam Donaldson. I did all the big talk shows. And so I come into the office and the news breaks that we've broken $1 billion in revenue. That's $1 billion before internet, pre-internet. That's $1 billion with no cell phone, no social media. There was no Facebook. There was no MySpace, none of that stuff. And 2-3 years before, I was sleeping in the backseat of a Lincoln Continental in the back of an abandoned building, like just trying to figure out, like, I was eating tortillas with relish from hot dog stands because I realized that shit was free. And I was dumb enough to be vegan in those days, in the early days. So
some girl must have talked you into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, I started to panic in my office thinking, fuck, man, they're going to ask me how much $1 billion is. I don't know how much $1 billion is. Is it 1,000 million? Is it 100 million? There's no internet. I was like fucking grabbing encyclopedias, and then somebody had to sit me down and say, look, dumb nut, sit down and be quiet. No one's going to ask you that. They want to know about this drug you've invented and this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, oh, okay.
And at this point, I picture this scene like straight out of the movies where it's like there's cash everywhere, there's checks everywhere, like that movie Blow where they're just stacking cash and people are stealing from you and you don't know how to pay your quarterly taxes because you've never had this much money in your life. Am I kind of along the right lines, or did you have this shit figured out, or were you getting robbed blind by your employees? And what was going on in the company at this time? Like, did you have your shit dialed in and you hired some adults, or was this just like the Wild West of herbal ecstasy?
Yeah, the other thing that you said. Yeah, it was that. It was the Wild West. And all the stuff that you said is true. Everybody was stealing from me. Excuse me. But moreover, I had no fucking clue what I was doing. But what I knew was that we were almost literally printing money. So any mistake that I made could be fixed by just printing more money. So we would make these pills for 25 cents. We had a pretty good supply chain set up. I had multiple manufacturing plants all over the world producing pills around the clock. It cost me 25 cents for a unit. We sold that unit for $20. Most of the business was cash. And we did that all day long